call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system. At the tone, please record your message. When you have finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
Hey, pal, it's Dad. It's 8:15. I thought the article, at least the thing online, is going to be printed tomorrow in the Times, was good. I think it's clear.
No, Joe. Hunter is not in the clear, and neither are you. Because the evidence that Hunter Biden regularly partakes in criminal activity continues to grow, as do the clues that Joe Biden knows about all of it.
My son did nothing wrong. I did nothing wrong.
And now, Hunter Biden financially benefiting from what's hurting Americans most?
Joe Biden sold nearly 1 million barrels of oil to a Chinese gas company that his son Hunter may still indirectly own a stake in.
Tonight, Peter Schweizer, author of Red-Handed, joins me to explore all of the latest damning evidence against the Biden crime family from Hunter's infamous laptop. Tonight, Criminal Cronies, the never-ending trail of the Biden family corruption. Hello, America, and welcome to the program. The Biden family secrets keep getting worse, and as I think you will see by the end of the program, this president is compromised. He's compromised either by foreigners that have evidence that we haven't seen yet, or he's compromised here in America with people who are promising do what we say and we'll make sure you and your son stay out of jail. I don't know which, but he is compromised. The web of shady activity is so complex, something new seems to emerge every single week, but nobody's talking about it. With so much political corruption around us all of the time, I have to ask the question, does this matter anymore? Mainstream media, if they even mention the Biden scandal at all, which they almost never do, they say the president's opponents are just going after his poor troubled son who has been through so much. You know, the endless stream of drugs, hookers, cashing in on his dad's political office. It's understandable. Well, no, it's not. And here's why we need to care about it. Is it just a vendetta against Joe Biden and Hunter Biden? It's not for me. The reason all Americans should care about the Biden family corruption is because it's symptomatic of the ruin of American politics and the American way of life. How many of us are just fed up with the leaders at the highest levels of government getting away with things that you and I would get fired for, we'd get canceled, we would go to prison if we did any of the stuff that we now know Hunter Biden did. Ben Franklin said right after they signed the Constitution, a woman asked him, "What have you given us?" And Ben Franklin just said, "A republic, if you can keep it." For the first time in my life, I realized this is the decision time. America, are we going to keep it? Because tolerating this kind of moral rot in the presidency is just not sustainable. Since mainstream media won't touch this story, I felt it necessary to update you on the latest discoveries and questions in the Hunter Biden's digital devices that just continue to demonstrate how much his life, his business, and his finances are intertwined with Joe Biden's. Hunter's own devices continue to prove that Joe did know about all of his son's business dealings, which means he is continually lying to Americans by pleading ignorance. It was just over a week ago that a hacker allegedly broke into Hunter Biden's iCloud account and began dumping photos and videos and other information on the 4chan website. Now, this may be different material than the stuff found on his laptop. We don't really know. We did not rush to broadcast any of that because not only is it 4chan, it's the right thing to do to verify as much as you can. Take it with a huge grain of salt before you put it in front of the American people. However, in our research, we have found that it is entirely consistent with the material that has been found on the laptop. For example, there are way too many photos and videos of Hunter that he made of himself interacting with drugs and prostitutes. It's disturbing. Also, the Washington Examiner reports that the 4chan material matches some of the contents they found on a backup of Hunter's iPhone XS on his laptop. Okay, so what are the videos we can show you that we think are real? Honestly, I think all of them are real because, I mean, how do you fake this? Anyway, why would you fake this? The photos and the videos that were posted by this alleged hack is interesting for the legal implications. It shows Hunter Biden talking with a prostitute about the amount of crack cocaine he is weighing. Watch.
No, I just weighed out the bag. It's 2.06.
2.07 without the bag.
That video is interesting, especially in the light of some of the anti-drug legislation that Joe Biden was a part of as a senator.
If you have a piece of crack cocaine no bigger than this quarter that I'm holding in my hand, 1/4 of $1, we passed a law through the leadership of Senator Thurmond and myself and others, a law that says if you're caught with that, you go to jail for 5 years.
So I wonder, has President Biden changed his position on the consequences of crack possession? Have we changed the laws? Somebody really should ask him about that, because there's his son weighing crack. Then there's this really disturbing text exchange between Hunter and a woman who apparently arranged escorts for him about the specific ethnicity of women that he wants sent to him, the women that he was ordering that day. We'll get back to the implications of Hunter's escort activity in just a minute. But there's also this text. The thread is labeled Messages with Dad. And in one of those messages, it includes a woman and a man having sex. Now, I realize a lot of families have a weird sense of humor. My family has a very weird sense of humor. Not that weird, but weird. And so, maybe it's just me, but I think it's beyond bizarre and, quite frankly, a little creepy to send your dad photos like that. And then there's the mysterious pedo Peter. That's the contact in Hunter's messages. The pedo Peter appears to be the way he listed his dad's phone in his phone. Now, the Peter part is a reference to the alias Peter Henderson that Joe Biden used as vice president when corresponding with some family members. Peter Henderson was a character in a Tom Clancy novel. But does anybody think it's weird just on this level that Peter Henderson in those novels was a Soviet spy? That's the least of our worries. It's the pedo part that needs explanation. Maybe it's more weird family humor, but I find that odd and disturbing, especially with the videos of Joe Biden sniffing the hair of little children and all of the other accounts of him that have come out in the last few years. So, some of this material allegedly hacked from Hunter's iCloud account. But on top of that, plenty more continues to gush out of the laptop that Hunter Biden abandoned at the repair shop in Delaware 3 years ago. I personally think he left this at the repair shop on purpose. I don't think he can stop unless his dad is stopped, quite honestly. But that's just me reading in, maybe too much. There's a weird video from January 2019 of Hunter in the nude again, using a crack pipe and drinking while at a detox center. Now, a month earlier, he had texted his dad and asked him for money to cover his stay at the treatment facility, complaining that he didn't have the money to cover it himself because of bills and alimony payments. Quote, I need to cover girls' rent, the tuitions, alimony, healthcare, their day-to-day costs, recurring bills, etc., which all work out to be around what you lent me last time. I'll get paid half of that in 5 days and make up the other half before Christmas, but it still leaves me short. Joe replied, quote, okay, how do you want to do this? I can pay the tuition directly and the housing and give you the rest. There doesn't appear to be an answer, but the next day, Joe just texted 75 being wired today. I'm assuming that's not $75 or $7,500. And it looks like that money was really well spent because Joe was lending Hunter a lot of money during the time frame, which was 4 months before he announced running for president. These new amounts reinforce how much Joe and Hunter's finances were intertwined. Between December 2018 and January 2019, Joe wired Hunter at least $100,000. Some of the latest insight from Hunter's laptop shows that he used a lot of that to pay for escorts, but not just any escort. Hunter frequently used an escort service called Uber GFE. The Washington Examiner reports that Uber GFE is not registered as a business in the U.S., but that its head office is in the Ukraine. Of course, it has to be Ukraine, right? Why does so much business always go right back to Ukraine? And if they're doing this kind of stuff in Ukraine, and we've already lost, $7 billion from the last administration, from last time he was vice president, is anyone watching our $60 billion that we just sent over to Ukraine? Is anyone? Now, according to various receipts found on his laptop, Hunter spent over $30,000 on Uber GFE escorts between November 18 and March 19 alone. In one instance, Joe wired Hunter $5,000 while Hunter was with an escort. Now, there's no evidence that Joe knew Hunter was blowing all this money on prostitutes. But just a few hours later, Hunter was having some sort of a dispute over a $10,000 payment, and he films this interaction with a foreign escort. It is disturbing. Watch.
Are you okay? Everything fine? Are you hurt in any way?
Okay.
Any way? Are you hurt? Hey. Is anything hurt on you? Anything? I was literally saying, I'm sorry that it took so long to give you $10,000. Do you have any bruise? Anything? Have I ever touched you in a bad way? Ever? Have I asked you every time if I could touch you? Every time. Sweetheart, look at me. You cannot talk to me that way and say things like that. Because I'm more respectful than anyone you've ever met.
This is the only video that I have seen Hunter make that makes sense to me. All the rest of them where he's weighing crack cocaine. I don't know why he made that. This one, I know why. Look at what he's saying. They just apparently finished a session. And he's saying, you can't talk to me that way. And are you hurt? Hurt in any way? Have I ever hurt you? Do you have any bruises? This is insurance against blackmail. Not only was he with a prostitute, he was beating the prostitute up. Hunter's primary contact under Uber GFE was a woman who went by the name Eva. Over a 4-month period, she directed Hunter to make payments to bank accounts that are linked to Russian email addresses 11 times. Now, this is one of his text exchanges with Eva, telling her that he can't wire the money to accounts linked to Russian email addresses because, quote, this is too much red flag for the bank, which is reason why I've been unable to take care of this to begin with. It's what got my accounts frozen and reviewed by bank. Send me Julia and I'll give her the cash. JP Morgan Chase filed a suspicious activity report over payments made to escorts from Hunter's account. And the bank filed a separate SAR concerning nearly $150,000 in payments between 2016 and 2019 to recipients with ties to the, quote, adult entertainment industry and potential association with prostitution, or who were listed in prior SAR filings related to human trafficking. There are additional SARs covering over 150 separate financial transactions that the banks were freaking out about and flagged involving Hunter and James Biden's overseas business activities. James Biden is Joe's younger brother, but Republican Representative James Comer of Kentucky, who's the ranking member on the House Oversight Committee, says for some reason the Treasury Department is not complying with the request for information about these suspicious activity reports, and he wants to know why. In a letter he sent 2 weeks ago to Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, Representative Comer says, quote, during a phone call on June 13, 2022, Treasury officials informed the committee, the Republican staff, that they will not provide SARs to committee Republicans unless Democrats join the request. Gee, I wonder how that would have flown if Trump was involved in anything like this. If his administration would have done that. We have 150 financial transactions by Hunter and Uncle Jim flagged by U.S. banks for suspicious activity. Yet Joe Biden says, I don't know what he's doing. I never discussed any of his overseas activity. Are you kidding me? Now, I have always known that he's lying about these things because, it's impossible for him not to know. But also the little facts like he wrote a college recommendation letter for the children of Hunter's Chinese business partner. But Hunter's laptop is just like the Mississippi River, just gushing out evidence that Joe Biden has been lying about this to you for years. The latest example is this voicemail.
Hey, pal, it's Dad. It's 8:15 on Wednesday night. If you get a chance, give me a call. Nothing urgent. Just want to talk to you. I thought the article, at least the thing online, it's going to be printed tomorrow in the Times, was good. I think it's clear.
Now again, why would someone save that voicemail? What does he think Hunter is clear of exactly? The article Joe is referring to is this December 2018, the New York Times story about the beginning of the business relationships formed between Hunter Biden and then the head of CEFC, China Energy. Joe left that voicemail 4 months before declaring his run for president. And just a week after those text exchanges that I showed you earlier, where Joe wired Hunter $75,000 to help him pay his bills. Of course he knew about Hunter's business life. Again, why would the son keep that incriminating evidence of his father saying that? Why would you pull that off your voicemail and burn it to your hard disk? Why would you do that? Again, I think this president is compromised. Foreign, domestic, maybe his own family. But we have a lot of questions that have to be answered. Like, why are we now selling our strategic oil reserves to the Chinese government? Next. Wouldn't it be great to get, what was that sports almanac from Biff in Back to the Future? It'd be great to be able to predict the future. We would be able to know exactly what to do with our money. Imagine knowing all the right moves, and we can make them all the time. Unfortunately, that doesn't, there is no flying DeLorean. So we have to plan ahead the best we can. And if you're a homeowner, planning ahead is the best thing you can do by cutting back spending where you can, saving money where it's possible. And it means giving a 10-minute phone call to American Financing. You should do it right now. In 10 minutes, their salary-based consultants will do a free mortgage review for you and let you know what your options are for saving money, whether it's a refi of your mortgage at a lower interest rate, maybe a consolidation loan to help you get rid of that high-interest credit card debt, or maybe it's just something like getting cash out of your home's equity. Whatever it is, American Financing has you covered. For over 20 years, American Financing has been America's home for home loans. So call them now. American Financing, 800-906-2440, AmericanFinancing.net. So in April of this year, gas prices were already insane. So what did President Biden do? Well, he did what presidents tend to do when they've got gas crises on their hands. They crack open the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Now, this is for war use. That's really what our reserve is for. I don't like it when any president from any party does it. But maybe what you don't know is we don't just get rid of some of our national emergency supply, which sounds like a great plan. We sell it. Apparently, an emergency sale, according to the U.S. Energy Department, was to, quote, provide a wartime bridge that will support American customers and their global economy in response to Vladimir Putin's war of choice against Ukraine, end quote. So only 30 million barrels were sold. That's all, just 30 million barrels. The Energy Department decided to sell it and, give it out to the highest bidder. Well, there was 126 bids to participate in what they call a price competitive sale. And they awarded contracts to 12 companies. Now, by law, these had to be the highest bidders. One of those 12 companies was the Chinese oil giant Sinopec. Oh, wow. They got almost 1 million barrels, 950,000 barrels of our emergency oil supply in that sale. Now, Sinopec, like all Chinese major businesses, is basically another arm of the Chinese Communist Party. To add insult to this self-inflicted injury, Sinopec has a history with Hunter Biden. It is part of the web of business relationships that Hunter developed while Pop was vice president. And I've been telling you about the Biden's business in China for over 3 years now. So hopefully you remember that in 2013, Hunter Biden co-founded BHR Partners, which had an exclusive investment deal with the Bank of China. 2 years later, BHR acquired a $1.7 billion stake in the marketing wing of Sinopec. Wow, how lucky for that drug addict. Last November, Hunter Biden's attorney claimed that Hunter no longer had any stake in BHR. I'd love to take the word of a drug addict, but I don't think I can. And Chinese records currently indicate that Hunter's own LLC still has a 10% stake in BHR. So which is it? Then we get to the question of, why are we selling our strategic oil to China? Why would you sell it to Sinopec in the first place? I mean, it's hard to believe the Bidens would be that stupid until you see him filming himself with prostitutes and crack. Maybe they are that stupid. But with your son's history in China, with your son currently under federal investigation, why would you allow Sinopec to buy a single thing? Even if there was no connection between Sinopec and Hunter Biden, even if Hunter Biden is no longer making a dime from any Chinese business, why are we selling it to America's #1 adversary? How's that helping us out at the pump? And by the way, President Biden has authorized releasing an additional 1 million barrels per day from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve through the end of October of this year. As it stands now, our reserve is at the lowest level since 1986. Does anyone think this is getting dangerous? Meanwhile, according to Bloomberg, China Nah, they're not struggling. They've increased their oil reserves over the last few months from 869 million barrels to 926 million barrels. Well, I'm sure glad that we could help China stock up while we drain our reserve. This is suicide, America. I mean, and I remember a time in our history, I'm pretty sure it was this universe, where helping communists was considered a bad thing. By the way, business partnerships with China as a national security threat is not just some right-wing talking point. Just 2 weeks ago, the FBI director, Christopher Wray, spoke at a conference in London and said, quote, "We consistently see that it's the Chinese government that poses the biggest long-term threat to our economic and national security. In addition to traditional and cyber-enabled thievery, there are even tactics, more insidious tactics, where they use essentially, they walk through the front door and then rob you. The Chinese government likes to do this, quoting still, by making investments and creating partnerships that position their proxies to steal valuable technology." So when you deal with a Chinese company, you know you're dealing with the Chinese government. That's the Ministry of State Security and the PLA, the People's Liberation Army. They're silent partners. There is no concrete proof yet that Hunter Biden profited from this specific oil sale to Sinopec. However, it is certainly possible based on the Chinese deals we know he had in place. And it's just another thing to add to the long laundry list of Biden family activity that has to be investigated. It's not unreasonable to ask questions about all these connections because Joe Biden has always insisted nothing to see here, while Hunter's laptop keeps revealing the exact opposite. According to Hunter's calendar on his laptop, he met with his dad at least 30 times, either at the White House or the VP residence while Joe was vice president. Often the meetings were just a few days after Hunter returned home from an overseas business trip. We also know that some of these meetings included Hunter's potential business partners because of photos like this one of the Mexican businessman taken at the VP residence. But maybe they just talked about breakfast tacos. The Bidens must be fully investigated on all of their foreign deals and relationships because there is now such a volume of suspicious evidence. We lose the republic if we look away. Plus, the fact that Hunter says Pop will do whatever he tells him to.
He'll talk about anything that I want him to, that he believes in. If I say this is important to me, then he will work a way in which to make it a part of his platform. My dad respects me more than he respects anyone in the world, and I know that to be certain. The man I most admire in the world, that God to me, thinks I'm a god.
I think he's delusional, but I do believe he will do whatever his son tells him. I mean, with evidence like we've already seen on the laptop. Good heavens, what does he have in a safe deposit box, perhaps? That helps explain why there's still so much mystery surrounding Joe and Hunter's activity in Ukraine. Another recent revelation from Hunter's laptop is his role in helping a U.S. biolab contractor get work in Ukraine while Joe was vice president. Now, according to the emails from his laptop, Rosemont Seneca Technology Partners invested $500,000 in a San Francisco pathogen research company called Metabiota. Biota, I think. Let me show you the memo from Metabiota's vice president to Hunter. In it, she discusses how they could leverage their team to, quote, assert Ukraine's cultural and economic independence from Russia and continued integration into Western society. Hunter then introduced Metabiota officials at Burisma. You know, the really corrupt Ukrainian energy company that paid him $83,000 a month to sit on the board. According to the emails, these two companies They got together and discussed a science project of some sort involving biolabs in Ukraine, which, if I'm not mistaken, are the same biolabs that we had to rush over and destroy. Wonder why. What was going on there? 2014, the U.S. Defense Department awarded $18 million in contracts to Metabiota, and over $307,000 were allocated for Ukrainian research projects. At the same time, Hunter's firm was helping raise millions more for Metabiota as it was transitioning to a for-profit company. In this email from one of Hunter's partners, Rob Walker, he says that he'll have a friend reach out to the Department of Defense on the down low to help prove Metabiota's legitimacy, since Hunter's team was trying to raise funds from places like Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley. Rob Walker, by the way, is a longtime Biden family friend. One who also profited from the Biden's Chinese business deals. Rob Walker's wife, I forgot to tell you this, his wife is Betsy. She was Jill Biden's assistant when Joe was vice president. So it's a big, happy family. All of these connections, all of these coincidences, they betray the fantasy that Joe Biden was completely unaware of his son's business activity. Of course he knew. The Bidens used the vice presidency as a for-profit enterprise. What are they using this office to accomplish? While Americans wait for any semblance of justice regarding the Bidens and their profiteering, we can take comfort in the fact that the Secret Service currently pays $30,000 a month to rent a Malibu mansion in Hunter Biden's neighborhood so they can protect him. How does a guy go from begging his dad to cover his coke and hooker bills to being able to afford a Malibu mansion in less than 2 years? I want me some of that. Just like everything else when it comes to the Bidens, your guess is as good as mine. Now, we are going to give you, I think, the foremost expert on the Biden family corruption, Peter Schweizer, next. So home title fraud is on the loose, and it's a bigger problem than you might think. In fact, it gets worse every day. And it's just not your garden variety of cybercrime. It's sophisticated, sneaky, and elegant. Oh my gosh, they've just outclassed Hunter Biden. Sneaky, intelligent. Oh, wow. When a cyber criminal, an elegant one, manages to hack his way into your home's title, he'll take a loan after your loan using your home's equity. And then he's gone. He leaves you to prove that you didn't just commit fraud. Even worse, you might even not know it for months. No agency will notify you or ask, did you sell your home? You have no clue until the collection calls come or the sheriff shows up. I urge you to do a couple of things. Number one, go to HomeTitleLock.com, read the testimonials, find out all about it, do your own homework, then register your home address. See if you're already a victim. And when you register to protect your home, there will be a little space for you to tell them that Glenn sent you. That way you can get 30 days of free protection at HomeTitleLock.com. That's HomeTitleLock.com. Joining me now is the go-to expert on the Biden family corrupt business activity. Probably no one has done more research into the Bidens' foreign dealing than best-selling author and journalist Peter Schweizer. Peter, were you disturbed at all by this sale of our strategic oil to Russia?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's pretty
I'm sorry, to China?
Yeah, I mean, the purpose of it, Glenn, was it's supposed to help keep domestic prices lower, but they end up selling this product overseas, among other places, to China. So, yeah, it was quite shocking to me why we're draining our strategic petroleum reserve that is there for our national security and basically doing a favor for the Beijing regime by giving them this oil, selling them this oil at a time when they are scrambling for resources around the world.
And their strategic oil reserve is going up. I mean, they've stored a lot of oil in the last few months, where we are depleting ours. I mean, I didn't know we ever sold it. Have we ever done that before? Is that usual, Peter? Because I always thought it was released, again, to add to our current oil so we could have lower gas prices.
That's right, Glenn. It's our strategic petroleum reserve. It's not the world's.
Yes.
It's not China's. And that's the problem. Yes, it was designed, it came out of the energy crisis because if we suddenly had a shortage of oil, we could tap into this. What we're doing instead is shipping it overseas and allowing China to tap into it. And as you correctly point out, they are accumulating oil at an alarming rate. It's a very troubling development. Yep. And when you match it with the Biden family's financial ties to China, it again makes it even more troubling in my mind.
Okay, so we've done some research on whether or not Hunter Biden is still involved with this company. They say no, but the Chinese say yes. So, I mean, I don't know which liar to believe here in this. But this is to me significant, not only that we sold the oil, but it's also significant because just even if he's not involved, the fact that we would sell it to that company just screams corruption. What do you suppose the thinking was in this?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, to be clear, Hunter Biden was on the board of directors and an owner, and may still be, of BHR, Bohai Harvest RST, a Chinese government-backed investment firm, who, when he was on the board of directors, bought a stake in Sinopec, which is this massive Chinese energy company. The Chinese company that received the barrels of oil from our strategic petroleum reserve is that exact same company. So that in and of itself is suspicious. And to your point, we don't know what Hunter Biden's status is with this Chinese company. They continue to say he sold his stake. But in China, they actually have pretty strict rules about requiring you annually to report who the owners are, even of small private companies that are not publicly traded, like this private investment firm in China would be. They continue to report him as an owner of the company. So on the one hand, Hunter Biden saying, I sold it. On the other hand, the Chinese government reports say he is still an owner. And it's shocking to me that the media and other people aren't raising a stink about this because, of course, Joe Biden is making huge decisions every day as it pertains to the Chinese government. And we have this ambiguity about what the Biden's financial ties are right now, whether they continue or not.
I just can't imagine anybody sane that is in the White House that would say, oh, that's a good idea. Now, we contacted the administration and asked about the sale, and they said, this is the highest bidder. So whomever the highest bidder is had to get the oil. That's not true. You're telling me if Russia was the highest bidder, we would sell it to Russia? That's not true. Right. That's a game that they're playing.
That's exactly right. And again, it's a strategic petroleum reserve. It's supposed to serve the strategic interests of the United States. And when we have allies in Europe that are facing energy shortages, and we have our chief rival on the global stage, some would say our enemy, China, and those are the two possible places, largely the possible places to sell the oil, I would say it would probably be a good idea to sell it to the Europeans and not sell it to the Chinese. So, yeah, right. This is ridiculous, and it's further evidence they don't see China, Beijing, as a threat. They see them as a partner, and that is a major, major flaw in the strategic approach of this administration, because China certainly sees us as their rival and enemy.
Sure. Suspicious activity reports, SARs, 150 transactions got flagged by different American banks. The Treasury Department knows all about it. They won't release the information to Congress. How unusual is that?
It's hugely unusual, and here's why it matters. These so-called SARs, or suspicious activity reports, are something that the banks flag and send to the Treasury Department because money is being transferred from a suspect foreign source. That could be a terrorist, that could be an intelligence agency, that could be a foreign government, and it's being sent to what is known as a politically sensitive person in the United States. In this case, that would be Hunter Biden. This is the way they track things like bribery, criminal activity, drug cartels moving money around. And the fact that you have this many going to the son of the president of the United States is in and of itself shocking. And the notion that the Treasury Department says, well, that's really not in the public interest. Congress, which is supposed to have oversight over the executive branch, really doesn't deserve to look at these records is absolutely absurd. Imagine if this was the Trump family and it was 150 transactions flagged by the Treasury Department of money coming from Russia. You would bet that Congress would get access to those records, and I'm sure that you and I would support them having access to those records.
I would demand it.
Yes,
I would demand it. I mean, they had to make up a fake pinging of a foreign bank, and that was big enough for everybody to say, we need to investigate that. And I was on that bandwagon, too. If that link is there with a Russian bank, that's a problem. But they don't seem to care about 150 actual transactions. Back in a minute with more from Peter Schweizer. His latest book is Red-Handed: How American Elites Get Rich Helping China Win. It's out right now. If you're one of the millions of Americans who suffer every day from pain, I want you to listen up. There is hope, and it is in the form of Relief Factor. I see testimonials every single day. I mean, that's I don't think I've ever had a client that has had so many testimonials from people who use the product. And it's not like, hey, yeah, their service was great. This changed my life. I got my life back. I'm out of pain. It's Relief Factor. Relief Factor. Go to relieffactor.com. I'm telling you, it's worked for me. It's worked for thousands of people just in this audience. 70% of the people who try it go on to order more. $19.95 for the trial pack. Take it as exactly as directed. Not working for you in 3 weeks, probably won't. But man, if it works, if you're part of that 70% like I am, it will change your life. relieffactor.com. Peter, I know we have never discussed the really sick sexual stuff that is on the laptop, but with this latest batch of stuff that came out, it's very disturbing, and disturbing in not only the way he acts, but also what he sent his dad, the fact that he calls his dad Pedo Pete. I mean, I feel like, maybe it's just me, but I feel like this is another Michael Jackson moment where we knew, but we didn't know. You know what I mean? And if his son is blackmailing him, because I think that's a real possibility. Why would you save those recordings of your dad saying you're in the clear? That only incriminates your dad. So a drug addict, a crack addict who's out of control is not beyond blackmailing their father.
Yeah, I mean, Glenn, there's always been a lot of ambiguity as to why Hunter Biden, first of all, seems to be losing laptops. I mean, obviously, there's the one in Delaware. There's certainly evidence that he left one with a psychologist that he was getting treatment from in Boston. In a video, he, I think, was with a prostitute or with a woman in a bedroom. That video was released. In the video, he says he lost a laptop. He thinks it's in the possession of the Russian mob. There's always this question of, is he really that reckless? You know, why is he doing this? And again, why is he recording information that could be incriminating? Who actually, I don't, puts recordings of voicemail messages of his father and other people on their laptop? Yeah, it's very strange.
And only messages that seem to incriminate.
Yes, exactly. So there's that question of motive and the fact that he has leverage over his father. Because look, he obviously has, whether it's financial or otherwise, has probably incriminating or embarrassing information. He could say certain things. But it also raises the question from a national security standpoint. You could look at the body of information that he's released and say, Hunter Biden can't be embarrassed anymore. All this stuff has come out. But he himself, in that video with that woman in the hotel room, talked about the fact that he could be subject to blackmail. So the sexual stuff you and I have shied away from because it's so gruesome. It's just awful to even think about. You don't want it in your mind or in your soul. But that's not to diminish it and say it's unimportant. It could be very important from a national security standpoint and from leverage. I focus on the financial side because I think that is already so incriminating and definitely involves Joe Biden himself.
Okay, so they've been investigating him for 2 years now. When is anything going to happen?
It's a great question. I don't know. You hear all kinds of rumors about what this grand jury is looking at. The bottom line is when it comes to tax evasion, failing to pay taxes, knowingly failing to pay taxes, it's a slam dunk. He admits in his emails he didn't pay taxes on millions of dollars. He borrowed money from somebody to pay $2 million in back taxes that he knew he owed. He paid that 3 years after the grand jury first started meeting. That alone would land somebody in jail, certainly if it was you or me. And you have a whole host of these other issues. And the issue here, I think, Glenn, is it's ultimately not about Hunter Biden or maybe even about Joe Biden. It's about a criminal justice system in America. Do we have two tiers of justice, one that applies to you and me and certainly to some elected Republicans, and then a second one for those that are on the inside and certain Democratic politicians? Or are we going to all be held to the same standard? If we're not held to the same standard, we don't have justice. We don't have a judicial system. We're not a law-based society anymore. And that's probably what scares me more than anything.
Me too. I started it with, we have a republic if we can keep it. And I think this is a turning point on whether or not we can keep it. I've only got about 30 seconds left here, Peter. If there is justice in America, how should this end?
It should end with Hunter Biden being indicted, and we should have congressional hearings that get to the bottom of how Joe Biden benefited, what he knew, when he knew it, and how it affected policy. That's ultimately what matters more than Hunter Biden going to jail, how this Chinese relationship influenced and shook and shaped our national security policy to the detriment of this country.
Really dangerous. Peter, thank you. Thank you for being an honest journalist who, you rat on both sides of the aisle, and it gives you a lot of credibility, at least in my book, and I appreciate it. Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Glenn.
All of this stuff really matters. And we may lose the republic, but the republic will never die as long as it lives in each of us and our children. Just because everybody else is doing it and getting away with it, we shouldn't play the same game. It's important that we are people of merit.